We are fan owned, so we have 4,700 fan owners. You're talking to a complete diverse range of individuals. Some have brilliant business experience. Others have absolutely no interest in spending X amount on a designer. Their general attitude will be spend that on the pitch. We talk about sustainability in football all the time, yet we're talking about sustainability in the context of losing money. The bit I fear is wage inflation. So you compare last year's average wage budget in the league was around 4 million. This year it's 6.2, probably because there's other owners there trying to compete. One of the very first conversations I had with our academy director is, how do you develop players for the first team? He's like, we don't. We develop Premier League players. And it clicks in your mind and go, okay, I get it now. The Exeter City first team, a step on their journey. I get frustrated where you get patted on the head of like, well done, you're a well-run club, but you're not a threat to us. There's a mentality shift with us where actually we want to compete, and I think that helps just generally of driving the club forward.
But before we dive in, if this is your first time on the channel, or if you're a regular viewer, please can you like, subscribe and hit the bell. It allows us to keep delivering you amazing guests and of course, create the best content. We thank you so much for your support and time to get on with the show. Joe, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the Business of Sport.
No, thank you for having me.
So I'm very excited for this. This is my university football club, as I was telling you outside.
Brilliant.
So I feel like I know a bit more about Exeter City than I do many of the conversations that we have here. But I want to get straight into what I would say is the most interesting part about this conversation, which is actually the ownership model and the structure of the club. Can you give us a little bit of indication of how the business of Exeter is actually set up?
We are fan owned, so we have 4,700 trust members or fan owners. They pay minimum £24 a year. Out of those 4,700, you'll get a board of trustees, so there's 12 trustees. Each year there is an election, so 3 of those trustees will tend to either come off and 3 more come on. To be up for election, you have to write a manifesto, and that can effectively be as something as simple as, I'm going to make sure the pasties are warm on a Saturday, to I want to change the way we run the football club or our view on green sustainable energy, all those kind of bits. It can literally be really vast, and then those members will vote for those trustees to come in.
So the 3 trustees, the board basically.
So 12 trustees of the board, and then out of that are 3 of those are then elected to the club board. So on the club board, you'll have 3 trustees, so effectively your fan representatives, and then you'll have 3 non-exec directors, these that can vote, and a chair. And then we've got some associate directors as well that are kind of there for subject matter expertise.
£24 a year?
£24 a year, yeah.
Pretty great deal to be part of a football club.
Honestly, so that generates 100 grand a year. So 100 grand a year will come across from the Supporters Trust into the club. And that's basically will effectively goes into our revenue line, and we'll use whatever that amount of money can come into the cost base. They also fund other different projects. So we, for example, last year we bought the freehold to our training ground, and that was funded via a loan between the club and the Supporters Trust.
How much does that type of thing cost you to
we got an incredible deal with that. So we had basically a friend of the club. So we were renting a friend of the club. Unfortunately, she passed away. Part of her will was that she wanted us, the club, to buy the land.
Oh wow!
So now we own freehold to the training ground. We also bought part of our stadium, which was also another loan from Supporters Trust to club. And the idea, so currently Supporters Trust own 58% of the club, and we've got some kind of silent individuals that they probably don't even realise they've got shares in Exeter City. So we're trying to get to...
How could that happen? How do you mean?
Well, so basically just historically, during each of the kind of transactions, you've basically got these kind of leftover shares, effectively. And the trust have been trying to kind of mop up the shares from individuals or right into them. There's a few in estates and things like that. So they're trying to get to... Their ultimate aim is to get to 75% ownership.
Yeah.
Part of the loans between Supporters Trust and club mean we'll probably convert those to equity at some point. And this is kind of this is probably something that's come in. So I joined the club 18 months ago, and as the chief financial officer, probably things that they've never really kind of thought about before, but actually it's probably kind of mirrors the transition in terms of being supporter owned but ran by effectively volunteers to a more kind of professional. We're employing people for skill sets now, and these are the kind of natural transitions you'd expect to happen.
Yeah. So, I mean, everyone will go, here we go again. Normally we sit on here and the biggest topic for discussion in a football club ownership piece is the reliance on owner financing, and the need for people to dip into their own pockets to support and prop up these clubs. I'm guessing you can't do that in the same way. So how do you, I guess, create a business model that works for you where you don't have to rely on that funding, but you can still perform and achieve on the football pitch? Yeah, so it gets more and more difficult, I think, each year. So we've got so like I said, we have 100 grand from the Supporters Trust. So again, going back 18 months, we were very risk averse. So we wouldn't, if the kind of business I came into was cost prudent, if it was, they would take the probably the path of less risk, which meant they built up incredible cash reserves. But we were sat with quite a bit in the bank and no real treasury management. So even kind of basic interest rates on or bonds or savings accounts, those kind of things just weren't happening. So what we do now is forecast was only ever really 12 months in. So we've now rolled out kind of 5-year forecasts. So we will look at cash. So the way we make decisions are, okay, if nothing happens, if we don't sell a player, if we carry on with the operational loss, we lose roughly £1.5 million a year operationally. So if everything was true and we didn't sell a player or we didn't get any contingent payments in, when do we run out of cash? So what's our kind of drop dead date? And then based on that, we'll create a cash runway. So then if we sell a player, that cash runway extends. If we need to put more money into the playing budget, which we consistently have to do, that cash runway gets shorter. And then it's going back to board and supporters trust going, are you comfortable with this runway? If we then to make a business decision, so again, go back to the cost prudency, it also meant we wouldn't spend 20 grand to make 50. Whereas now I think that's what me and the previous CEO to me, a guy called Jeremy Tipper, came in and kind of, I've always been very growth mindset, invest to make money back. So we can do this project now, or maybe we need to start looking at asset financing and those kind of bits. That's a big shift in mentality, right?
Yeah,
and generally people don't like change. So how do you get them comfortable with the idea that you're going to be spending before you see a return?
So it's still a journey. We're still on it now. So there's still kind of I've got a chief operating officer that is still very prudent, but it's being able to smell opportunities. It's all about people. So the whole business is about getting the right people in the right places. So we've now been able to kind of have the conversations that then allow us to make a decision, and then we have a club trust agreement. So there's parameters that the club can work within. So if we need to go above that certain spending limit, we need to go to trust and get approval. So we have to have a really good business case. And you're also then not talking to potentially business-minded people. So it's, why would you spend, for example, we're going through a process now bringing LED boards in. So why would you spend 250 grand on LED boards when why don't you just go buy a striker? And actually it's kind of giving that business case, okay, 250, we get a return on that. This is how much we'll generate. It makes the business grow. Our revenue growth has been really good within the 18 months we've been, me and Jeremy were in the business. Jeremy's now exited the business and I kind of transitioned into CEO 6 months ago. So it's moving people's mindsets, but also allowing an environment where you're allowed to get things wrong. So that cash runway, it does allow for failure as long as we kind of learn from failure. We won't ever innovate if we don't kind of take some calculated risks.
Do you think this model makes everyone within the club a little bit more conscious about making every pound spent go a little bit further? That iconic former guest Charlie Methven scene in Sunderland Till I Die, when I remember he walks in and he just explains the finances to the team, and the main point is, football clubs generally do have a mentality of the people in the clubs where it's not my money, it'll be covered, let's just spend, and people are very profligate. Yeah. But in this model, again, you can't be. So while it may be a problem in some ways, does it create much better efficiencies so that you're actually able to go and do good business in football, which, as we know, is quite hard to achieve? Yeah,
definitely. I think the other kind of element of that, it also allows us to, like, ticket price, we're quite high for League One. But I think we've got so many invested stakeholders that you probably do get away with a little bit more than maybe other clubs do.
What is the ticket price?
So our match day price would be £27. Our season ticket's £515.
Really?
Adult. Yeah. So we're very high, but we've got standing and seated. So that would be the seated price, and then standing's about £350 for a season ticket.
Okay. But the fans.
I think the fans accept it because we're fan owned.
Yeah.
So it's not like a high net worth individual is taking the money out of your pocket. They kind of understand that this is the environment we're competing in. So I'll probably do need to pay a little bit more for my ticket price season ticket. But we'll do things like, I think this is the bit that's really important in terms of that relationship between club and owner, fan. Nottingham Forest game, we didn't inflate ticket prices, and that's the club knowing that it's unbudgeted income. It's also an incredible event where we will get brilliant press coverage. There's a business decision there where we go, actually, would we pay X for the coverage we'll get by not raising ticket prices?
What is a game? So FA Cup, Nottingham Forest at home. You take them to extra time as well. So and penalties, wasn't it?
Yeah, last year would have been replay.
But like, what does that do for your bottom line? How much difference does that make?
Yeah, that was kind of £250,000
really
for one-off game, because we were on telly. We bought LED boards in for the game. So we also obviously sold out, and then food and beverage on the back of it. So you kind of £250,000 for that game roughly. But the best thing about it was, I couldn't have written a script for ITV to have talked about our football club in the way they did. It was
in what way?
In just the every message that we'd want to get across in terms of fan ownership, sustainable, doing it differently. All those messages came across. So that for me was kind of worth probably a bit more than the loss revenue that we would have got, because we'd have sold out anyway, even if we'd have put the ticket prices up by £10 probably.
So what's annual turnover? How much are you making a year?
So we turn over between 7 and 8 million. That's kind of split between 30% of that would be central revenue. Gates would be about 2 million. Commercial revenue, probably $1 million. Retail's really interesting actually. It's about 600 grand, but 80% of that is done through our club shop, 20% online. So again, you look at these little bits and you go, I've never worked in a business where bricks and mortar shops outweigh online sales. So that, again, you go, okay, that's a growth area. What can we do about that? And then we've got kind of, obviously, you get central academy funding and stuff like that. So that's roughly our breakdown.
What are the budgets that you set on, I guess mostly on a player side, right? Because that's where a huge amount of the expense goes.
Yeah,
what are those
probably
budgets?
45% of our cost base is player budget. So we're third lowest budget in League One. So we're 3.5 this year. And then that kind of, again, this is probably one of the bits where maybe a frustration actually is, I mean, Gary and the football staff could outperform playing budget and still get relegated, because they could finish fourth and bottom, outperform your playing budget, and obviously bottom four go down. So he is constantly outperforming his budget. We finished 13th last year, and I look at a metric of kind of if you're, so say we're third lowest, so if we finished 22nd, that would be if everybody's money went to the same length, so everybody spends £1 and that's where you get to. we're about, I think we're £1.30 this year. So where we are currently is we would have to spend £1.30 for our pound to actually get that in terms of pounds spent on playing budget.
Shrewsbury, very own Liam Dooley, turned around and said it almost becomes a bit of a KPI, a little competition within the league to outperform your budget.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. We have to outperform our budget to stay up.
Well, yeah.
And it's one of those where you wish sometimes on a Saturday afternoon at 5 o'clock, you wish you could give context. So like when we're playing a Birmingham or we play Wrexham this Saturday. So when we're playing them, you know, you're playing against a team that's probably 4 times your budget.
Are you hosting some A-listers?
I don't know, actually. I think we've got some. The documentary people have definitely been in touch, so I don't know whether the A-listers are down or not. And it's these moments where kind of you go to stuff. Okay, what are we going? How do we take advantage of this? Yeah. What do we move into? What doors does this open for us? And that's the great thing about League One and to be fair, EFL commercial deals. We were at the EFL conference and had kind of CBS coming over, and it makes you. I think I was texting our technical director going, okay, we need to sign an American player or these kind of things. And it makes you think slightly differently in terms of, and again, I think this goes back into the one of the biggest drivers for us is, again, not relying on that owner. We have to be so smart on what markets we would go into or things that we do, because we're competing against these huge institutions effectively. And it makes you realise how well you're doing sometimes when you're kind of going and talking to these other clubs. And I always compare it to it's almost public service and private sector. Whereas my previous life did insolvencies. So public sector are probably not very commercial because they don't need to be. Whereas private sector, you have to generate money or otherwise you don't have a job. So it's that kind of mentality, and that's probably the similar mentality to how I view Exeter City.
It'd be very easy to be resentful for a lot of teams in the league when you do have something like a Wrexham, like a Birmingham, you know, making a huge amount of money, being able to spend in ways you can't. This year, looking at League One, the teams are huge. You know, there are some really historic clubs in there. There are some massive clubs in there. How is that competitive balance at the moment? Do you fear that the gap is getting bigger and bigger in a singular league, where it is making it harder for a club like you, without the spending power, without the structures to go and implement, you know, massive strategic shift?
I can see the benefit of having them in the league. The bit I fear is then wage inflation. So you compare last year's average wage budget in the league was around 4 million. This year it's 6.2. And you take the big clubs out and it's 5.5. So wage inflation's going up anyway, probably because there's other owners there trying to compete. And I think everything's the same. The pool of players hasn't changed. So until you've got a world where, and to be fair, this is probably one of the bits that I don't know whether I'll probably stand slightly different to other football clubs in terms of, we talk about sustainability in football all the time, yet we're talking about sustainability in football in the context of losing money. So it's not sustainable. So we and I think sustainability has almost become a bit of a buzzword for just, if we say that, fans will like that. So we're going to say we're sustainable and we won't. But then again, the kind of the other side of my brain is going, I'm fundamentally like a capitalist and would like investment into football, and I completely get in terms of EFL will need investment, constant owners coming into that cycle.
Is the Wrexham and Birmingham participation the rising tide lifting all boats in the extent where it does? You talked about CBS being conferences. You know, let's face it, you're not directly necessarily getting the benefits of Wrexham and Birmingham succeeding in the way they are, but what you are getting is an increased exposure and eyeballs in places you maybe wouldn't have done, which is so important to developing the club, right?
And that's exactly it. So then now it's up to us to take advantage of it, and that's what I try and reiterate to the staff all the time is. It's up, like we could sit there and complain that we increase our playing budget and we don't move up places in the league, or we could smell the opportunity. I'm talking about smelling the opportunity before. What can we do? Because from my mind, we talk about Wrexham and Birmingham. Our model is completely different to all other 92 football clubs. Wimbledon probably slightly closer to us. So why can't we sell that? So who are we engaging with? What employee-owned companies are we engaging with? What companies that have the similar values to us are we engaging with? We don't take gambling sponsorship, yet currently we don't really shout about taking gambling sponsorship, and it probably looks like we just can't get it. Whereas actually, let's stand up for what we are. Let's be loud about what we are. Let's do shows like this that kind of highlight the club we are, and that hopefully then attracts other businesses, national brands to want to get involved with us, because we're almost an antithesis to what football is.
It's hard to differentiate yourself in this environment, right?
Exactly.
Everyone's kind of the same in many ways.
Exactly.
And the difference is players and position.
Yeah, exactly that. But we have a genuine USP that we can sell or try and commercialise. And I go back to when the CBS guys came back, Green Bay Packers. So again, kind of member-owned, fan-owned. Does CBS open up a door for us to go and talk to Green Bay Packers? Or there's loads of kind of football clubs in the US, the European model in terms of 50 plus 1 ownership.
It's all, this is the age-old challenge between the business side that goes on and running that efficiently, and also then the performance on the pitch. How's it been going on the pitch, this season? Because again, you seem to be, let's face it, outperforming your budget, but at the same time, it's difficult to continue doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're doing okay. The last 2 seasons, what we've tended to do is get off to a really quick start. So everybody kind of start talking playoffs and things like that. And it's, at some point we'll go through a dip. I think when I joined, we didn't win for 100 days. And that
correlation?
Well, maybe. And then there was that, to be fair, it was great for me. It was straight into the fire of like, okay, this is what it is. And we've gone through a slightly sticky period to this year. And then after the Forest game, we sent the players went to La Manga, because we basically went through a period of, and this again goes back into the football and the way we design our squads, is we lost Tristan Crammer got recalled to Brentford, sold to Millwall. Tristan Crammer pre-season was effectively sent back by Bristol Rovers. So we've taken a player, developed him for Brentford. Brentford have then sold him, but we've lost probably our best player. We had a couple of injuries in defence. So we ended up what was going to be a quiet new transfer window. We sold Millie Ali on the 3 days before the window closed. So what was going to be a quiet transfer window became, I think we signed 9 players, I think, in the end. So we had a group of squad that we needed to get back together really quickly. So we, mainly due to the FA Cup run thing, we had a bit of spare funds. We sent them to, quickest way of getting people together is putting them together. So sent them to La Manga for 4 days, and then we've not been beaten since. So hopefully
that's
a correlation.
Anyone listening who wants to turn their form around.
Yeah, but then again, you take that context of being fan owned in, and it's like, why are they going on? Why are they going on holiday? They've not won for X amount of games. And it's that kind of, I guess it's those decisions that you make in terms of those elements of it.
If you lose a player like that on loan, but it has a serious markup on the club that you loan them to, how do they influence your decision making? Because them just being able to recall and then sell halfway through a season where you've probably got that player in to rely on him for a full season, that's a problem.
There's a twofold to it. Is one, we will now get players because they know we develop players. So we had a similar instance last year where we took Vil Sinisalo from Villa. He was on loan the previous season to Burton, wasn't getting a game, was on the bench. He was probably not kind of on Villa's radar. So we'd take him on loan. And then in that summer after, he wins all our Player of the Year awards. That summer they sell him to Celtic. So we're now starting to get a reputation of developing loan players as well. And we play a style of football that suits that deliberately. So possession-based style. So we'll get hopefully good quality loans. People are starting to recognise that we're really good at developing loan players for them. We go into it eyes open. So there will always be kind of a recall clause in January. But the thing that you probably need to get a bit better at is when a Tristan Crammer goes, we've got a list of 10 players underneath that we'll go, okay, we'll just go get him. Or the flip side of that is we'll get Brentford we've got a really good relationship with Brentford where they will realise what they're doing in terms of taking our kind of best defender out of our team. So they there's probably an element of us being able to we got Ryan Trevitt and Tony Yagane on loan for the rest of the season as well, who are two really good, well thought of Brentford.
Did that relationship stem from Ollie Watkins?
Or
was that already there?
Yeah. So we've got some. Yeah, there was a relationship there with Brentford, but we kind of go and Marcus will go around Marcus and Gary will go around clubs in the summer and pitch, but we've got tangible evidence now of us being able to go, okay, look what we did with Wilson and Sarlo, look what we've done with Tristan Kramer, send us your best loan players.
So do you take a loan structure, a loan approach to recruitment as a result of an ownership structure that you have that maybe doesn't allow you significant outlay in transfers like other clubs can?
Yeah, so we'll do our structure effectively, or our squad makeup is effectively youth players. So obviously you're paying less for a first, second year scholar than you are for an experienced professional. So that makes up a bulk of our kind of probably between 3 and 5 of our squad. And then we'll take 5 loans and we get quite good loan rates. So it allows us to invest in other players. And then we'll have kind of 3 probably cultural players. So more experienced, higher level, been there, done it, but they set the kind of tone. They're almost your kind of like coaches within the thing. And then what the other bit that we're starting to develop is investing in players. So we bought Millie Ali 30th of January 2024 for 5 figures, sold him 30th of January 2025 for well into 7 figures. So that makeup in 1 year, there's not a much better ROI for that. And then we also previous year we sold Sam Nombe for bought him for 6 figures, sold him for 7 figures.
We quite often talk about that as the football lottery.
Yeah.
But what we mean by that is, you run an academy system or you run a loan structure, and one day you may get a return that is significant and gives you an injection of money that you may not have been able to account for on a particular year. But actually, this isn't the football lottery for you, is it? That's very clear strategic objective to improve the business of Exeter, the club.
Yeah, so we pitch ourselves as kind of an opportunity club, whether that is players, whether that's youth, and then the youth specifically, we are Cat 3 academy, so you get X amount of funding for being a Category 3 academy, but we staff it as almost like we're a Cat 2 academy. So I think we're maybe an analyst off being what a Cat 2 academy would be at staffing levels. And so over, I think it's the last 11 years, we've invested £5 million into our academy, but that's generated us 20 million in player sales. And the bit that I love is the only 40, I think it's 46% of it is upfront fees. So I almost call them like seeds. So we'll sell a player for, so actually use Jay Stansfield as an example. Sold him as 15 for 6 figures. He played 10 times for Fulham before he got sold, so we got another 6 figure in, and then obviously Birmingham buy him, and we've got a decent 20% sell on of that. So
Birmingham buy him for a price that is more than the turnover of a lot of clubs in the league, right?
Exactly.
So the impact for you is when you do that, is that like a 5%, 10%?
Yeah, so we'll always have. We're normally 15 to 20% sell-ons, and then what we're quite good at is putting contingents in. So if you play 10 games, we will get 50 grand. If you pay an international appearance, we'll get X. We would normally take a lower fee for more contingents because I remember one of the very first conversations I had with Aaron Pugh, our academy director, is I was kind of going in it with, how do you develop players for the first team? He's like, we develop Premier League players. And it kind of clicks in your mind and go, okay, I get it now. The Exeter City first team is just a step on their journey. Ollie, again, you could name them: Ollie, Watkins, Ethan Ampadu. If Leeds get promoted this season, we get an amount of money because there's sell-ons there.
Oh, really? So it's success because his journey isn't even direct to Leeds, and you still have an involvement. So he went to Chelsea then.
Yeah, it's kind of the only time it ends is when if he were to leave on a free transfer. So it's kind of almost a residual. So we're almost 20% of Chelsea's 20%. Because
the Ollie Watkins transfer, I think, wasn't it initially? It was like 2 million or just under for the club, but the 20% odd sell-on clause, which was when we had Paul Tisdale on the show, former manager, he said a key reason why the deal with Brentford was so attractive was because of that sell-on, and that netted when he went to Villa for about 30 million, £4 to £5 million, right, for the club.
So you almost double it. So because you've developed a player that you back then to go on and be really successful. And that's a conscious decision and also it's not specific to each player. So we might do one where we go, okay, we'll take more up front and there's those kind of deals exist as well. So every it's not like a template and we'll just send that template out. Everyone's looked at completely kind of separately.
And so even then, let's say again, Ollie Watkins example, if that 4 to 5 million comes through the sell-on, is that then paid to you over the duration of the transfer fee that Villa pay Brentford? So it's a continual influx of that money, which is good for you, I guess. People may think,
it is. Yeah, there's so the most recent one, Jay Stansfield. So I think Tom Wagner, the Birmingham owner, came out and said what a great deal it was because it was over 7 years. The fee was back-ended to years 6 and 7.
Let's drink Chelsea Kool-Aid.
Exactly. Well, football on Klarna. It's but that for us is so now I'm there with so we'll book that profit this year. So I've now got to pay corporation tax. We run the business to be not loss making. So I've not got allowable losses to come and kind of wipe up the profit I'm going to book. So I've got a corporation tax bill that is bigger than the money I'm getting in. Yet kind of two people over here have made a deal. So when I'm involved in a deal, I would make sure all my liabilities are covered. So it's great for everybody else. And Fulham will make losses. So the 50 million profit they book in year one, they'll just write off losses. Yeah. I've then not got an owner to go to and go, okay, we know we're getting X amount over this 7-year period. Can we bring can you give us the money, basically give us the money, front it up so we can go and invest in infrastructure? And I think there's that bit and that is purely Chelsea model dripping into League One. And that you go back to the question of, is Birmingham and Wrexham good? I think there's definitely good in them, but those kind of player models or transfer models make us almost, I mean, we'll go out to debt providers and you're looking at, okay, you can get £1 million up front, but you're basically paying another X in interest because of the payment profile back or the amortization back.
So let's look at how the people around the club then interact with this model. So start with the fans, and I'm paraphrasing, you haven't said this specifically, but a stepping stone type approach as a club may not be what the fans really want the club to be. But there's also a reality to where you are, and if you can keep the performance up, I'm sure they're very happy. How's from your experience at the club, how have the fans accepted and kind of approached this model for the club?
Yeah, I think they are very accepting of it. I think they take longer to turn on performance. They kind of stick with the team a bit longer. I think there's always a noisy kind of minority that will kind of vocalise an opinion maybe before you want to. But the big thing for me is that then educating the opinion. So we'll try and do fans forums where I talk quite openly about the challenges we face, the way the model works. Even, I mean, you take the last 2 seasons. Tell Sam Nombe, our kind of star striker, the day of the transfer window. So Gary goes into a 6-month period without a striker. We sell Miliali, our top goal scorer this year. And
are you tempted to not do those deals?
So I will always call Gary and go, "Are you sure?" And this is where Gary's really good, like in terms of he completely gets the model of the club. So he's like, "Yeah, it'll make my job harder, but this is the club." He's fully aware and buys into that model, and that's like he must get a buzz off finding one of those, because and I think the other bit is we don't go through managers as quickly as other clubs.
I was going to ask.
And that's a deliberate. There's a deliberateness in that in terms of you have to take we have to take a long-term view.
Yeah, but that's very easy to say, and a lot of clubs do say it. It's actually very hard to stick to when results don't work. So to actually do that is quite, again, unique.
Yeah, and we're really open in terms of how Gary comes, obviously board meetings every month. We're very open in terms of what we expect of him, and we're also, I think we're quite cognizant of the fact of the condition he's working in as well. It's the people, the teams he's competing against, and he does compete. And I think the other bit that's probably been slightly different, and obviously I've never experienced a different manager at City, but Gary's a winner, and that whole winning mentality, like when you've won, you always want to win. And I think that goes back to a previous question of how do we get staff in that mindset. I think Gary really helps that in terms of, we don't want to be little old Exeter City. We don't, like, I get frustrated where you almost get patted on the head of like, you're a well done, you're a well run club, but you're not a threat to us. There's a mentality shift with us where actually we want to compete, and I think that helps just generally of driving the club forward.
Okay. What about to take this club to the next level? Does this model work? Could you operate this model in the Championship?
Probably not. So there's a bigger picture to that in terms of, if we went into the Championship, we've got Big Bank, largest standing terrace in the UK. So if we went into the Championship, we'd have to change that terrace to safe standing. So you'll straight away you're reducing that capacity to 6,500 from 8.5.
Wow.
So automatically you're then talking, okay, maybe we need to either develop the stadium or we need a new stadium. So there's a larger connotation to that kind of, can we make it work in that environment? I think again, wage budgets are prohibitive. So the almost, from my understanding, almost the lowest wage budget in the league, you basically add on your TV revenue and from what our wage budget currently would be, you'd be pretty much the lowest budget in the league. So you're spending all the money that you've got, and you're trying to sign these players on 2-3 year contracts. I think the flip side of that is, I think if that were to happen, and I think there's an element of us getting everything right, where we've got a good crop of 5-6 academy players. We've got 5 really good loans, and we do. We're talking in terms of trying to become a top 50 football club, which is basically us going, we want to flirt with League One playoffs and maybe have a good playoff run. So there's an element of us wanting to do that, but I think that would end up being an opportunity of, okay, how do we reframe fan ownership? I don't think we'll certainly I wouldn't ever want to move away from fan ownership, but is there a reframing of it? So when I talk about getting to 75% fan ownership, is there something we can do with the 25? I
was going to say, can you have 25% private?
Yeah.
75% fan. Does that work?
Potentially. I mean, that's not that dissimilar to Jim Radcliffe at Man United, right? Where he's got 25% ownership and he controls the football. So is there a model there where, we get someone that wants a football club, so you control the football bit, and the fans will make sure we look after the integral bits to it. And
to me, that sounds really hard, because it seems the model runs so deep in both the performance and the business that it isn't to run the football side in a commercial way wouldn't work with the fan driven business that you've managed to create on that side of it. That seems pretty hard.
I think it would.
Not that it could happen.
No. I mean, any model that we come up with would be incredibly difficult. It'd be an incredibly tough sell to fans as well. Anyway, I think, and this is the biggest thing about football, right? It's a shame that it wouldn't work in the Championship. I think that's fundamentally what is almost flawed in football. That you've got, everybody talks about them as community assets, and you've got a fan-owned football club that is effectively had a ceiling for being well run, not making losses, being genuinely sustainable, putting in models that are deliberate and to make sure we don't lose money, so the football club will never disappear. That's our main goal. The football club will always be here.
But I just want to be clear on that, because you said you lose 1.5 million a year. So just again, for people to understand, how does that, with the club not wanting to make losses, you made a great point earlier about us thinking sustainability is just not losing as much money as someone else.
Yeah. Those
1.5 million loss versus your objectives, how does that fit?
So that we then obviously looking at transfer income to fund the 1.5, and then that goes back to, okay, how do I drive the commercial side? Yep. So we talk about the retail being 80% bricks and mortar, 20% online. So okay, what's that? We do 600 grand on retail, so potentially there's a good 400 grand growth in that model. So can I drop the 1.5 to a 500,000? So that makes us even more, even we're less reliant on transfer income and less reliant on the academy model.
Have people come to buy the club? before?
Not. There's been slight inquiries. Our balance sheet is, I would probably hazard a guess, it's one of the healthiest in the Football League. Net assets were about 11 million. So I don't think there's not many football clubs that will have that balance sheet. Not that I'm aware of, which I find a bit balmy, because I don't know why you wouldn't. No debt.
Do you think they find the model too intimidating? You get a deal done from this fan-owned model is probably not the easiest thing for them to do.
I mean, that's what Wrexham did, right? So there is an element of probably where we are in the country as well. There's probably an element of...
you think that acts as a negative?
I think it potentially does. It's quite difficult to get national brands down. I think even Exeter Chiefs, one of our biggest local competitor, and I think probably Plymouth also find that. There is an element of that, and probably just not, everything's London based or that kind of part of it.
Do you not think it potentially works in your favour as well, where you don't have the competition? You're a one club city, and that gives your local demographic the chance to all get behind the same club. You're not sitting there with 4 teams to choose from in a catchment of 2 miles, so a 2-mile radius. It
works in our favour in a lot of other areas, and even youth development. So academy players coming through there. We're not a London club where you've got a pick of kind of 10 different football clubs. If you've either got Exeter or Plymouth, and traditionally Exeter is the place you can come through. There's a growing kind of B Corp community in Exeter, and again, when I talk about how do we partner with club businesses that are similar values to us, B Corp fits really nicely with that. That's one of our kind of longer term goals, is to become a B Corp football club, because it opens us up to that other commercial area. So there's definitely advantages to it. And it's probably me surmising of why we've not had an approach to buy the football club, because I for the life of me can't think why we wouldn't, other than maybe they just don't think it would ever be possible.
Do you think fans would entertain it? Obviously speculating, right? but do you think it's something they would be open to, or?
I'm not sure, actually. I think you'll get a mixed response in terms of we're pretty much talking to the same fans that saved the club 20 years ago. So, and the thing that we always say in these conversations is, you can choose who you sell to first time. You won't be able to choose who you sell to the next time. I think an older generation probably wouldn't. I would question whether a younger generation would. However, there is a core of Exeter City that love being fan-owned, and they would play in any league as long as they're fan-owned. And it's my job to go, okay, you say you'll play in any league, but if we're in the National League, our academy that you love looks a lot different. So it's those kind of realizations.
Do you think your job is easier or harder in this model than others who operate in a privately owned organisation?
I think I have a lot more stakeholders to communicate with. So, I mean, we're looking at branding at the moment, which is
sensitive. Yeah,
very sensitive. We're actually using the same designer Cambridge used.
Worked well for them, I think.
Yeah, and it's that. And again, this goes back into the piece of how do we develop as a football club, and logo being seen in a more digital age. What's the logo actually? What's the crest actually interacting with? And also our crest, we don't actually own the IP to it, so it's the city crest, and effectively, if they wanted to change the crest, they could. So we don't actually own the intellectual property of the badge, which is one driver for us to try and look at doing it. But we're interacting at a level of going out to trust members and going, we're thinking of looking at this. Would you allow us to have a look at it? Knowing that from a business side, and knowing probably from a individual owned business, we'd pull forward, and these are the reasons why we want to do it. And they probably go, yep, go and look. And then you go into fan consultation once you've got images and things. So the process is longer.
Is it sometimes a problem of too many cooks? Sometimes you, as the leader of this organisation, need to make a decision for the best interests of the organisation. You need to be able to make a decision that's going to bring more money and more opportunity, more future, allow for more opportunities for future development and growth. People sometimes, if you consult 4,000 individuals, it's going to be impossible to get to consensus.
Yeah.
So what's the balance that you have to strike between making those decisions and being the chief executive and listening to fan sentiment?
So look, best committees are one, right? So I've got a really good relationship with the club and trust chair. So it's the same person, guy called Nick Hawker. There's an element of me building up trust, or the fan base building up trust in me as well. So I'm really cognizant of the fact that there's decisions that I need to make and communication I need to do that make this fan base trust me, that I've got the best interests of the football club at heart, which I have, and I've started to do that. I've got enough freedom to make decisions that I need to make, but I also know the parameters of when I have to go out and communicate, and it's working within those parameters. Sometimes those parameters will frustrate me naturally, and we'll end up getting to the right decision if I've communicated it well enough to that fan base that they understand it. There's a natural thing of, you're talking to kind of a complete diverse range of individuals. Some have brilliant business experience, others just don't, or have absolutely no interest in spending X amount on a designer, and their general attitude will be, well, no, why aren't we spend that on the pitch?
It's the age old again.
It is, and I don't know. I love working for this football club because I love being an underdog. I love winning, and I love winning in the way that when nobody expects you to win, and we do. And winning to us looks probably different. So winning to us is playing a 17-year-old against Nottingham Forest, because we know in 2 years' time we'll reap the rewards from that. So winning isn't always kind of 3 points on a Saturday, although that's obviously nice.
But again, this year, fingers crossed. Now I think we're 14th or 15th at the moment at the time of recording.
Yeah,
that may change.
Yeah. 45 points. I think we're on.
45 points. So you can now start looking ahead. So, what points do you allow yourself to start planning for a next season, budgeting for the things that you can do that would differentiate if you were in League Two, let's say, from League One? When do you allow yourself, I guess, to start looking into that?
The biggest thing we'll have kind of 3 forecasts on the go. So one way we do occasionally have a championship one, and then we'll have
what's that at the start of every season?
Yeah. Or normally when we've won the first 8 games, or we start off really well, and we're like, oh, but we better look at this. We'll always have a League Two play, and effectively the big driver with that is your playing budget reduces. So then you're looking at, okay, if we sign a striker on a 3-year deal, how does that look in League Two? What's our League Two budget going to be? How much headroom do we have? How many players are contracted for next season? How many do we need to go and get? What's our headroom for investing in those? What's the average weekly?
What do you receive from the media deal in League One?
2.2
million a year.
Yeah.
Okay, and if you go up to the Championship, that significantly increases, doesn't it?
80, 12, 8 is the split.
80, 12, 8.
Yeah. So the media thing, again, 4% isn't a huge drop off. So you obviously, and that your drop off for that effectively comes off your playing budget.
But 80 to 12 is, isn't it?
80 to 12 is huge. Yeah. And this is where you've got the kind of, this is the other thing we do. We're always looking at the teams that come down and the teams that come up. So last year when Wrexham come up, we know they're going to have a bigger playing budget than us, but Crawley come up, maybe they'll be similar to us. So we're constantly looking at that all the time, and where we might be within that kind of playing budget league almost. So if we know it's like a Walsall are probably going to potentially come up with American owned, they'll probably have a bigger playing budget than us. So we know that, okay, our playing budget probably needs to increase. And also go back to we're aspiring to be or striving to be a top 50 football club. So what does that mean our playing budget needs to get to? So how we incremental growth. We have the way Exeter City is successful is incremental growth. And how do we keep being able to grow our playing budget?
We've had Rick Parry on the show, a huge advocate for better distribution from the Premier League down into the Football League. A really important conversation because the strength of football in this country, many agree, is built on the pyramid that allows the Premier League to be so successful. Where do you sit? You're quite new to football, and
Yeah.
it's quite interesting. As you said, 18 months in,
Yeah.
you've been a CFO, now a CEO. Where do you sit on that discussion? Do you think the existing model is sufficient, or should it support the structures of our system better?
I think it has to support the structures of the system better. So I think if you've not got a pyramid, and there's always a born in the EFL, so there's always that kind of those programs going on, and the players that have come through the EFL into the Premier League, there's a huge responsibility, I think, on the Premier League to make sure the football pyramid is solid. But I also think the EFL have a responsibility to the National League. So that it's a passing down of wealth almost. Difficulty will be is the, I guess, money escaping football. So that's the bit that how much do we spend on agent fees and those kind of bits, and that's football. That's money that's not coming back into the game. So what can we as a collective do to, one, make sure any more Premier League money that comes down doesn't go straight into player wages, which we've already spoken about, which is what will happen. And you've also got, let's not make sure we let's not sell our soul. So you've got kind of, let's not let Premier League clubs take our academy players for pittance or fixed fees. We make sure we don't give that up for these EFL deals, where the Premier League deals, where sometimes I think football coming into new to football, we're all loss making. So we'll have everybody's going to grab a pound if they can get the pound. But actually, what are you giving away for that pound that might affect that football club in 5-10 years' time?
But that's long-term thinking. Football
which
hates long-term thinking.
Exactly. Give it another 18 months, and I'm same as everybody, straight into short-term thinking. But I think that's where football needs to think longer term a lot of the time.
We had a great chat before we came in about your women's team and the role that plays in the club. How important is the development of that to furthering what we've been talking about throughout this, which is the club as a brand, building its profile in lots of different ways?
Yeah, so we're women's team is kind of integral to our future vision in terms of a community club. So not having representation from 50% of the population would be a huge mistake from us. They've been incredibly successful recently. So they were used to be run by the community trust. So not paid to play, effectively trained 2 nights a week at the local college. We brought them in so they got promoted from Tier 4 last season. So as part of getting promoted from Tier 4, we brought them into the football club. They currently sit 3rd in Tier 3. So Ipswich are top of the league, #United are 2nd. Ipswich are full-time. We're part-time, so we pay the women's players real living wage for contact time. Again, there's a probably wider point on women's sport, whereas we're the men's club, men's team, football club is effectively funding the women's team at the moment to the tune of nearly 200 grand, I think. So that money from us is going straight out of men's, but that could be, if the women's team didn't exist, we could put another 200 grand into playing budget for argument's sake. I'm not saying that we would do that. But in Tier 3, there's no central funding. So you've got WSL Championship funded through this new co, which effectively, from my side, looks like a breakaway of Premier League type bits. And then you've got funding at grassroots. There's no funding of the pyramid below. So I think that is fundamentally flawed in women's sport in general.
So it's basically you just have to take the full cost of this. Yeah,
you're taking Tier 3, Tier 4 clubs, and you've got some big clubs in those tiers. And there's almost a race. So currently there's a race to the first two. There's a race to the Super League, and which teams can, look at Newcastle, for example. Newcastle women's team put a huge amount of money into there to get to the WSL, because there's probably a time frame. I think we spoke about it earlier. There's probably a time frame, and they're now talking about closed leagues and reserve teams coming into Tier 3 and Tier 4. So there's an element of that. We've got to see how it kind of washes out, really. But it feels to me like they're making the same mistakes as the men's side.
But it's the problem for you, right? Because you've got an opportunity here to build something really valuable in, and the structures actually aren't going to support it, even if you're quite successful. So you can only do so much, is my point. And there's only so much money you can pour in without seeing a return. Where are the the biggest opportunities for you to develop this? Is it in creating something alongside the men's team that speaks to a different audience? We spoke again before about it being much more of an entertainment product than maybe the 3 p.m. kickoff, which is built on legacy and passion and historical fandom. This can be different.
To me, it's a completely different audience. It's probably a more, it's obviously a less tribal audience. So from our model, in terms of I'm looking at, okay, where's the next trust member? Where's the next trust chair? So actually that's a great place to be, to kind of advertise our model to. And we'll do it in a way where, like next year, we'll look at the women's team won't make a loss, or it'll make a significantly less loss. So we'll try to do it in a sustainable way with commercial partners and things. But for me, it's growing. How do you grow your trust membership? Because the way we replace our high net worth individual is getting 4,700 trust members to 47,000 trust members, probably charging them a bit more than £24 a year. But that's how we'll grow the collective club, and that area and that kind of one commercial partners, but also someone that's I think probably 50% of our audience that turn up to women's games don't come to men's games.
Really?
Yeah. So we've got quite a broad fan base there that we can then hopefully convert to trust members.
And how many people are coming to women's games?
So we're averaging, I think we had a game at SJP on Sunday where we took 851. I think we're averaging about 600 fans a game at the moment. And WSL is only averaging 3.5. So again, we made a decision at the beginning of the season to put six games at SJP, so that it would be, there's 11 league games. So we wanted SJP to be the primary venue for women's football. There's things that we've done that in a way. I think if we made that decision again, we probably don't make the same one, just because of impact on pitch, impact on staff as well. We're asking the same staff, to take on another 11 games effectively, because obviously 5 at a different venue, and also growing the fan base. So we've probably gone a bit early with the amount of games at SJP in terms of that volume of games at SJP, because really when we're talking about creating a sustainable women's team. So when you're saying you're getting roughly to break even to open the stadium up, we need 3,500 fans there. So we're almost setting them up to fail, I think. Whereas actually, if we can grow the fan base so it demands to be at SJP, and that kind of helps us grow. But the challenge with that is we need to find a venue that allows that growth to the 3.5.
Of the 4,000 odd fans, what's the breakdown, men to women?
It is, our typical
ownership. Sorry, I'm talking about that.
Oh, ownership. Okay, so I think it's probably 70% men, 70%. 30%
so there's still
women.
30% of the £24 paying ownership. If you want to call them that are women here.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think that gives an increased interest in actually making this a viable part of the club, where other teams may only purely look at it as, is it the right business model for us to execute?
Yeah, I think there is an element of that. There's also us, like, we try and brand ourselves as the opportunity club. We're an opportunity club without a women's team. So immediately we're not an opportunity club then. And it's that
I like that.
Yeah, it's that kind of.
Is that something you openly?
Yeah, so we're starting to. So it's actually, we've just done so in my 6 months as CEO, we just started doing kind of behaviours and values and things that are important to us. So Opportunity Club is something we've effectively stolen from the academy. So academy market that really well.
That's all right. It's your own academy.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
Can do that.
You can do that, and that translates not into just football. That translates into staff as well. So we had a chief commercial officer for a really short period of time, but he went on to be a CEO somewhere, and that's a success for us. So we're an opportunity club for everybody. So whether that's footballers, whether that's women's footballers, whether that's staff within the building, that's the kind of culture and values that we want to kind of shout about, really. So that's and I think that goes back to then, if you have Exeter City on your CV, everybody should know that you've had a really good grounding in sport.
How important is communication? And things like this are fantastic. We obviously benefit from it. They're brilliant conversations. But to you, how important is this level of communication in developing the club over the coming years?
Massively. So we need to be really clear on who we are. So one of the things that we've been I think we're good at is telling our history. So, you talk to anybody at the club what happened 20 years ago, and the kind of upheaval and you talk to some fans and they'll pinpoint the moment that they knew the club was in trouble. And those stories.
What actually happened there?
So basically, they got taken. Two individuals owned that ended up going to prison for fraud, but the supporters trust effectively got pulled together. Thought they were taking on a club with, I think it was £2.5 million worth of debt. Found out it was 4.5. So they've got £4.5 million worth of debt. We've got insolvency practitioners in. They managed to do a CVA, so an agreement with all their creditors. It's funny. Interestingly, there's some football clubs that didn't agree to the CVA. So some people from back, so Julian Tagg still remembers those football clubs, which is quite funny when they come to visit SJP.
Really?
Yeah.
They don't get the nice sandwiches.
No, they do not. No. And then so that they basically came together. And effectively, the club was run by volunteers, and then the Man United FA Cup game happened. That helped them pay off X amount of debt, and we've then sold players. So Matt sold Matt Grimes.
Yeah.
So the story is basically Paul Tisdale developed a team around Matt Grimes to sell Matt Grimes. His sole intention that season was to sell Matt Grimes. So that then allowed us to build the 3G down at the training ground. And that's kind of been the story. But like every sale, and this is the romanticism where every player sale you can pinpoint a moment in history at the training ground. So Ollie Watkins goes to Villa. We build what the training ground is now. It used to be huts and things.
Somewhat common, surely. Someone from Netflix or Amazon or Disney, that's your production.
Well, that's what we...
An 8-part series, pick 8 players and look at different ways you've managed to build like the business of the club around those transfers.
And this is the history as well. We were the first football club to play Brazil in 1914. We had a documentary crew down for the Bolton game. It was brilliant because there's so many stories that we did a Brazil day in, I think it was the 4th of January, so the weather wasn't Brazilian. But there's so many stories that kind of knit their way through the football club.
Yeah. Well, the hardest thing is originality in this content now, isn't it? Because everyone's done a season profile or whatever it may be. But if you can do something around this, which is a completely different appreciation of where money goes when it comes into a club and how it can help you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's genuinely a story that people will kind of get engaged with. And then you go back to, okay, if we engage with them, how do we get them to become a trust member? We look at Benfica and Atletico Madrid have 450,000 members. So how can we get to that? What's our story that we can go back to really good at telling our history? What's our story now? And it's opportunity. It's doing things completely different.
Yeah, brilliant. Let's go into a quick fire. What has been the hardest part, or the most surprising part of being a chief exec since you've taken it?
Probably the amount of stakeholders that it's surprising in the way of how many, how a decision affects other people differently. So you could think you're doing something for the benefit of the wider collective, but it will affect minority really sensitively. And it's that kind of having to be aware of so many other bits of decisions and almost trying to foresee them, which is quite difficult. That's probably the most difficult part of being a CEO.
Not including clubs in your league is a harder question. Which clubs do you look at and admire how they run?
Brentford. So I think Brentford's story is really similar to us. I think they're, so many clubs call themselves community clubs. I think specifically Brentford really are one. I think I actually look to some clubs in our league as well. So I love Peterborough's model in terms of buying talent from National League, developing them, selling them on. And yeah, they're probably the main two.
Where would you most like to make money, or should we say generate some revenue that you don't currently? Where's the biggest opportunity you see?
Biggest opportunity would be, I think commercially, so advertising, sponsorship, revenue, we're very probably old school in terms of you look at LED boards and things, and national brands, I would love to partner with a big kind of employee-owned business, or a mutual or something like that.
Do you look at sponsorships in a way where, yeah, great brand, but how could we build a relationship with them that's going to help the business develop off the
that's exactly how we look at partners. We call them partners. We've probably been, that's one of the kind of things when we walked in, is we were really transactional, and now we're like, what's the mutual benefit in our partnership? So we would look at, just trying to think of an example. We've done like a really basic one. We did a lift in the away end, so the wheelchair fans couldn't sit in the away end. So we've done a local partnership with a local business that do accessibility lifts. So they've put a lift in the away end with a platform, and now they can do that. The disabled away fans can sit with their own fans rather than sitting in with kind of home fans around them. So it's those kind of things. And that's monetary. That's not huge for either of us, but it's a benefit for the longer term bits.
3 p.m. blackout, good for Football League now, or outdated and not required?
This is where I have to think carefully, because from my side, probably outdated and not required. From my fan ownership stakeholders, they will be very, very passionate about keeping the 3 p.m. blackout.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that? Is that because they fear the narrative
I think so. Yeah. I think there's an element of it. That's why it's always been. You're changing football. Like Sky's, even though it's obviously Sky pay the majority of our make up quite a lot of our commercial revenues. There's that general narrative out in the public that TV's bad for football, and get rid of the 3 p.m. blackout and no fans turn up. I don't think that's true. If you want to see live sport, you go and see live sport, whether it's on TV or not. I think the effect it has is probably more on away fans. But we've got an away end where, our average away end will be 400 or 500 fans. So if that's reducing to 200-300, then actually the offset of media revenue will be far greater than that. And I don't think removing a 3 p.m. blackout will have a huge impact on our attendances.
Next 5 years, finally, what does success look like for you, as well as the club? Where do you want this to go?
I think the top 50 football club for me is a big driver. So strive to become a top 50 football club on the men's side, and that would. If we can do that within 5 years, that would be a huge success. Then there needs to be a lot of things to kind of go our way. But I think we do think I'd back the people that we've got in the business to do things really well. I think we recruit well. We spend our money wisely. So again, you go back to the prudence of the people within the business. And there's an element of, I was a bit worried about when we kind of release the purse strings, people go a bit wild because they've not been able to before. But I've got a kind of a saying that if you kick a ball in the hedge, go look for the ball, don't go buy a new one. That's that mentality, and I think that's kind of ingrained in us in terms of an Exeter City way of doing it. We won't spend money kind of unwisely. We did a great example of it is we got a pitch side monitor now where we had a new analyst come in and they wanted to get a TV next to a training screen so they could provide instant feedback to players, and she sent one through from Watford. It was 30 grand. So I was like, that's a bit Premier League that. So our groundsman and chief operating officer ended up finding a trailer on Facebook Marketplace.
Really?
Bought an outdoor telly, and we're now, so they use that specifically for set pieces. I think we're third in set piece goals this season, and it's specifically from that, or they put it back to that monitor.
Look, I've loved doing this. This has been such an interesting look inside a club that is run so differently.
Yeah.
So thank you for explaining it in such a great way, but also just for telling us a little bit more about the story. And I'm sure people will have loved hearing from that. So
no, thank you. I've loved it. Yeah, it's been really great telling our story.
Brilliant.